Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to my page, Personal Coach for Success. People are joining at Inspired Lessons and on YouTube, and I'm just really excited to actually have a guest with me this morning. It's not something I often do, but when I find someone special that I believe can share some value to you, I love to have them on and share their zone of genius as well. So my guest today is Amy Charland. Welcome, Amy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Eva, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. Oh.
Well, I'm going to read your bio, so it's going to get even better. So here's
Okay.
what I asked Amy, and what Amy does is really brings people into an area of their lives where they feel more fulfilled in what they're doing for a living. And having been someone myself who had a job that was no longer fulfilling her and actually draining, she is just perfect to have as a guest. So I'm going to share her bio. Amy helps high achieving sensitive women escape soul crushing work and launch a new career path that lights up their life as well as their bank account. And when you work with Amy, you gain the clarity and confidence needed to make the leap from corporate hell to landing your dream career. So tell me what inspired you to help women do that, because I know there's got to be a juicy story around that.
Oh, of course. There's always a juicy story behind I think that why we choose to go into business, right? Well, obviously I can identify with being in that soul crushing job. And quite frankly, I can identify over and over again because I'm one of those slow learners, Eva. I, I'll go back for just a moment. So I was working in higher education and I worked my way up the ladder, really working hard and focusing on just getting the numbers. And I was doing this fabulous work. And then one day I was brought into the stark white room and introduced to the HR rep. And my boss was sitting there in front of me, handed me a Pepsi and said, "You're going to need this."
A Pepsi.
A Pepsi. Yes,
Nothing
a
stronger.
Pepsi. Yeah, no, they absolutely. I guess that's the strongest that they could legally give me at that point. And then I heard those words we never want to hear, right? "We're letting you go." And it was
Mhm.
absolutely heartbreaking because I'd worked so hard. But in that moment, there was actually a moment of just, oh, I can finally breathe. And there was this sense of calm. I'll never forget it. That just washed over me because I was actually in a soul crushing job, but afraid to leave. So
Mm.
I had to be pushed out so that I could start to look at other options. And I'll be honest, I did the normal thing that we all do as soon as we lose a job. I went and tried to find another job
Mhm.
exactly like I was doing. And I was being flown all over the country and interviewing at different colleges and universities. And it just felt, for lack of a better word, just yucky. I just couldn't see myself continuing to do that work. And don't get me wrong, I loved working with students and I loved the work I did, but being in those types of environments where it's very hierarchical and patriarchal, I knew I wasn't a good fit
Mm.
for that. And I couldn't do the work I really wanted to do within those systems. So I took a step back and said, what is it I really want to do? And that's when I started. I think this is how far back this was. This is when Google just started. And so I did Google coaching, but
Mhm.
even coaching was something very new. I had never heard of it before. And I started Googling and found this thing coaching. And I was like, ooh, that's it. That's what I want to do. And that's what led me down this path of transformation because when I was in that soul crushing job, my blood pressure was through the roof. I was depressed. I was on Prozac. I had gained over 200 pounds. I was nearly 400 pounds at that point, and I was
What? Wait,
miserable.
wait, what? Wait, what?
Yes. Oh, yes, I was nearly 400 pounds at that point in my
Oh
life.
my God. All right. I think we have some people watching. Who is listening or watching that is absolutely shocked by Amy's revelation right there. Just put me if you're watching live. And even if you're watching on the replay, like, okay, I just have to like, can't let you blow by that.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, honestly, I know what it feels like. I have a similar story when I share my story with my audience and anyone who asks. And when you are so unhappy and unfulfilled at work, it leaches out into every area of your life. You know, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So your mood gets affected, your well-being, your health, your relationships. You can see what that does when you are actually not doing things in life that fulfill you and light you up because you feel like you have no choice and can't break out. And so, wow, 400 pounds. So, what came first, the job or the losing the weight?
Oh, I would say at that point, you get laid off and you realize, and I was also $50,000 in debt, and I was single, and I mean, that's just the bottom fell out at that point. And, so I had all of this going on. So I moved back home, and I was mid 30s. Oh, can you imagine just having to move back home? It was like it's just so difficult. But then I started to relax and find really what did light me up. And I think that's when the weight started to come off. But it
Wow.
was still because I had trained my brain to be in stress mode and to work. I was still working really hard. And I was working really hard at trying to learn personal development. And that's when I was doing a lot of the coach training, and I was still working really hard. So I hadn't let go of those patterns of working really hard. I
Yeah.
had just transferred them to another area, but that stress and that anxiety was still really running my life. And that's when I got into wellness coaching,
Mm-hmm.
which really transitioned me into looking at, okay, how do I take care of myself, and how do I set some boundaries, and how do I focus on self-care? So
Mm-hmm.
that was very helpful for me to start to look at, okay, how do I lose the weight in a very healthy way that's right for me? So I can absolutely say this. I never went on a diet that whole time, because from my previous experience, I'd gone on diets and diets and diets ever since I was a teen, because I was always the heaviest kid in class. I was always heaviest growing up and during my college years. And that's when I started to lose some weight. But I was listening to all the diets, and I was going on all these diets and not eating. And then that turned into binge eating, and then it turned into not eating at all.
Well, that
And
sounds soul crushing too.
oh, it was. It's absolutely soul crushing. And so I had all this. And so when the job wasn't working out, and I was feeling soul crushed in my job, then I started to soothe myself with food. So all that weight came back on. And so I knew from the past, from all that dieting, it gave me a diet mindset that really created some eating disorder, some eating issues, that because my brain had changed. And so I had to re-engineer all that and go, wait a minute, these diets are working against me. And
Mm-hmm.
so I need to unpack all that and just focus on what feels right for me. And it's been a long journey. It wasn't an overnight that I lost that weight, because I had to unpack all that learning that was so wrong when it
Yeah.
came to that diet mentality. And so it
I
was,
love the fact that you mentioned that it was a journey, because that's
mhm,
that's really what's important for people to hear. You know, a lot of people want the quick fix, the quick solution, tell me what to do. And it
mhm,
is a process. Anything that has to do with personal growth and development and living a fully charged, vibrant life is a journey, and it's not just one thing that's going to get you there. And the other thing I love that you mentioned, and how your coaching journey has changed.
mhm.
You know, I gather, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're no longer coaching health and wellness. You've actually up leveled what you're coaching now. Is that right?
Yes, for private practice, what I'm focusing on is career now, because I understand that the pillar or the foundation beneath that is really wellness. And that's
Mm,
what I learned all my years as a wellness coach working in corporate. So as a
mhm.
corporate wellness coach and a for-profit area of healthcare. And what I learned after talking with CEOs and lawyers and doctors, yeah, and people who externally were very successful, I got to learn what were those things that were really holding them back.
Mm,
And a lot of them were focused on wellness, but they really had a huge impact on their career, on their productivity, on their effectiveness, on how just they showed up to work and their happiness level. So I really see career and wellness as intertwined. And when we try to separate those, well, then we're separating really, I think, all the juiciness and the energy and
mm.
the vitality that can come from focusing on self-care and also taking care of our career as well. Because
It really is establishing the habits. Like, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't show up our best, fully engaged, fully present, fully vibrant in our home life, in our work life, and in our lives in our communities out in the streets. And that's why you see so many frustrated, stressed out, burnt out, overwhelmed, unhappy people, and they're not in a good mood. You
Mhm,
know, when you're feeling that way for a variety of reasons, or they have these self-sabotaging patterns of behavior. Like for you, it was the unhealthy eating,
mhm,
using food as a source of soothing yourself as opposed to nutritionally taking care of your body and your mind. And I love that you created this journey for yourself and you're in the space of helping others to do that. So, if you had to give our listeners, our watchers, our viewers any advice on what would be the first step that they should take if they find themselves, where we're doing this interview during the time of COVID. So maybe a lot of people are really just happy they still have a job if they
mhm,
are. But what I love about your story, which was similar to mine, is we were forced to make a decision by our bosses,
mhm,
letting us go. I was downsized personally. And so it was something that happened for me,
mhm,
not to me. And it sounds like it did for you as well, where we had a choice in that point. And a lot of our viewers may be at the same choice point as well, where, okay, my job situation has changed. I wasn't happy in it anyway. Now is an opportunity for me to find something to do that I can really wholeheartedly show up to 100% fully engaged, and that brings joy to me. So, what's the
mm.
first thing I should do?
Oh, for those who are just feeling really stuck in a job right now that it feels so crushing, but you don't see that there's any escape. The first thing that I started to do, and that was really helpful for me, and it's going to sound so simple, Eva. It's going to sound so incredibly simple,
I love
and we
simple.
do it naturally every day, but we don't really hone in on it. It's taking some deep breaths.
Mhm.
And why that is so powerful is because when we are feeling overly stressed, when we're feeling burnt out, when we're feeling anxious, all our breath is just survival breath. It's not that thriving breath. And so if we can take some really deep breaths and be in that present moment, just in that moment, all that stress and anxiety can just wash away. And when we can start to retrain our brains to be able to feel calm, to know what that feels like, to be in that present moment, that's
Mm,
when that inner wisdom, we can start to tap into that. It's very hard to hear that inner voice that really wants the best for you when you're just spinning in that old brain threat
mm,
mode where everything is like, oh, I might lose my job, or I have lost my job and I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. Not that that's all not important and doesn't need to be attended to, but when we're focusing on all that from threat,
mm,
we cannot see the opportunities and we cannot think creatively and we cannot do those steps that we are meant to do. We tend to end up um, freezing. That's a response to threat,
Fight
or
or
we
flight.
fight.
Mhm.
We may be fighting it in different ways, maybe getting angry and wanting to just lash out at those who are closest to us, or it could be a flight where we just hide and we just
Mm.
pretend that that issue
Yeah,
isn't happening.
the paralyzing, response, the hiding, the not doing anything because they don't know what to do is a very, very real response. I
Hmm.
remember thinking, and I've had actually this happen a couple of times in my life, but if we can train ourselves to look at this as an opportunity where we are creating space to manifest
Hmm.
what we desire, as opposed to having the stress and anxiety around it. I know it's easier said than done, but seriously, if you're in a job that is not lighting you up and you're going through the motions and when you're not joyful, I remember I used to tell my kids this: if mommy's not happy, nobody's happy. My
So
job
true.
is to make sure that I'm happy. But we do this, with our parents, with our coworkers. You're always that person that, it's obvious that you're not happy and fulfilled in life. And so if there is a mobilizing event, and let's honestly, 2020 has been a mobilizing year where we get to make those decisions, like, how do we want to spend the rest of our lives? What feeling do we want to have? What contribution do we want to make? What's the impact that we want to have, not only for ourselves or for others? And so having people like you to be able to go to, and I do similar coaching as well. I do it more on a high performance level, like what habits and practices do you get to implement so that you're living a fully charged life and it's sustainable in
Hmm.
every area: home, work, communities, everything. And really stepping up the leadership, but really taking that first step out of the soul crushing job and getting some guidance and having someone to bounce ideas off of is awesome. So how can people find you? See, I might be able to
Uh,
plug it here.
Yes, and so they can find me on Facebook, on my Facebook page, Lights on It Again Coaching, if they want to just see a little bit more about
Mhm.
what I do. Also, if they just want to talk with me directly, they can go to escapecorporatehell.com and set up a conversation to have with me. And then I think Eva has sent you a 2-week mini course that has some breathing exercises in it. And
Mhm.
so it's a very action orientated course. And I've got some referrals to some certain apps too that can be really helpful because
Mhm.
we're living in the world of apps. It can be really helpful in some areas. And I found some breathing apps that are super simple, not complicated, that can really help you to start that breathing practice.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I'm going to ask you to go into the chat afterwards and just leave that
Hmm.
for people. Put those links in there because I'm sure that that'll be very, very valuable for sure. So thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us hope that we can escape our soul crushing jobs and really step into something more fulfilling and powerful and more impactful in our lives. So appreciate you being
Oh,
here.
thank you so much. It was a delight being here with you.
Bye everybody. Thanks for joining. And please leave a note like where you're tuning in from, whether you watch this live or on the replay. We'd love to hear from you and stay connected with you so that we can offer our support in any way, shape, or form. So have a happy hump day and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.